One thing I like to do kind of on during the first impression run is I like to take these knobs, these potentiometers in here, or pots, and I like to just give them a little bit of wiggle. Hello everyone and welcome to the Guitar Foster Parent. I'm John McLain. Delighted to have you along as we begin a new playlist today. We're going to start a brand new project on the Guitar Foster Parent YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and without further ado, here it is. We're going to begin a project on this instrument right here that we recently acquired here at the studio. This is a Harmony Model 02814, and I don't know if they were colloquially known as the Model 2814 or if the leading zero is important, but on the back you'll see there is a sticker, mostly still there, that denotes the model number. I did a little research on this guitar. These guitars are still available in the used market. I found a couple pawn shops that have some. There's a couple of them available on eBay as well. Harmony guitar. Let's talk a little bit about the history of Harmony guitar. They were founded in 1892 by a German immigrant named Wilhelm Schultz. Schultz built guitars, usually acoustic parlor guitars, which were very popular back in those days. And then Schultz sold the company to Sears Roebuck around the time of World War I. And Sears Roebuck, of course, that was the time in our history when department stores are really coming on as the way Americans purchase things at retail. And Harmony guitars were featured in department stores like Sears and then their competitor Montgomery Ward, and actually sold quite well. These instruments were well thought of. They were American made. They were considered to be a superior musical instrument. And remember, this is before the days where Gibson and Fender really started experiencing their golden years. This is before that. And Harmonies actually sold quite well in department stores. And in fact, in the 50s and 60s were really the leader in sales. There were more Harmonies being sold than any other brand in America. And then in 1975, pretty suddenly, the company folded. And then the brand was purchased and is experiencing a resurgence actually right now. The brand was reestablished in 2018, so just a few years ago. And Harmony guitars are now once again being sold and are fairly high end. Some Harmonies are going upwards of $1,500 to $2,000 depending on how they're appointed. But this guitar, I'm not sure how vintage it is. I don't see a serial number anywhere on the outside of the instrument. It might be under the neck, and of course we'll be pulling the neck off as part of our process on the show here to have a look at it. But the way I begin all of these projects is I just give the guitar a physical inspection, a once through, just to kind of get an idea and some ideas on how we're going to move forward with the guitar. The guitar is black, glossy, pretty straightforward. A one-ply white pick guard is featured along with white pickups and these off-white knobs here. Kind of a tuxedo look. This guitar features a tailpiece, a single tailpiece, adjustable with thumb wheels here. And then the ball ends of the strings are just held down by this piece here. So that's the kind of arrangement. So you don't have saddles on this guitar. You have kind of a unisaddle holding all 6 strings. Overall, assessing the look of the body, it's not in bad shape, really. I think this guitar has some years on it. There's a few dings here and there, but the finish, it looks like, is pretty much 99% intact. There may be a crack here and there, but I really don't think, I think this guitar was taken care of fairly well. This strap lock down here, or strap hook, is very loose and the screw seems to be stripped, so FYI, we'll be repairing that as we move forward. 2 single coil pickups with a single volume and tone. Very, very simple electronic setup. Moving up the fretboard, initial reactions, there's a couple of marks in the fingerboard up toward these top frets. Not anything that's going to affect its playability, and really the fretboard, aside from the typical dirt and oil that we find on older instruments. Really, the frets are in pretty good shape. Just down here, kind of toward the business end, frets 2, 3, 4, there's some crunchiness, some indentations. I think that those will dress out. We'll polish those really good and see how they feel, but I really don't think we're going to need any major fret work. One thing I noticed on the nut between strings 4 and 5, I don't know if you can make this out in the camera, there's some material missing there, a chunk out of this plastic nut, and I'm fairly certain it is plastic just from looking at it. So we'll be fitting a new nut on the guitar. Dual string trees on the headstock. As you can see, there's quite a bit of an offset coming down past the nut to the headstock. It dips down quite a bit, so a couple of string trees there. I must say, this headstock is pretty much mint condition. It is actually quite nice and really looks very, very good. These tuning machines on the back of the headstock, they're plastic, not terribly high quality. However, they look pretty good, and they've kind of got a notch on the end of them, which is a little bit of style. Fairly certain they're original to the instrument. I don't see any sign that they've ever been changed. But as we'll always do, we'll take them off and we'll check them for functionality. But I think if they work okay, we'll leave them on there. We'll clean and lubricate them so they run smoothly, and we'll leave them on there. Turning to the back of the neck, really there's some marks in this neck, but it's not too bad. It's a semi-gloss type finish. I wouldn't say it's glossy, but it's not matte either. It's kind of somewhere in between, but it looks like it's in pretty good shape. I really don't see any problems back here. The neck is also quite straight. I've checked these, and this is hard to show on the camera. It's a little bowed, but it's straight. So we'll probably require a truss rod adjustment when we get to it, which there you can see the truss rod is at the top on this particular instrument. Yeah, but other than that, it does have a Harmony neck plate, which has a couple scratches on it, probably from a belt buckle. You can see this guitar straps up kind of like a Gibson SG up high here, as opposed to on the hook of the body. But really, I mean, you can see it's got some marks on it, but it's really not too bad. So what we're going to do next is we're going to, now that we have our first impressions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug it in and tune it up, and then we're going to see how it sounds. One thing I like to do during the first impression run is I like to take these knobs, these potentiometers in here, or pots, and I like to just give them a little bit of wiggle. And I can tell there's some slop in here. It kind of wiggles back and forth. This is often a sign of wear, which kind of makes me happy, which means these pots have been used a lot. The guitar has been played, which is nice. But these things do wear out. They're a mechanical part, and oftentimes when you have noisy pots, that kind of crackle and make noise as you move them, that's typically because these potentiometers are worn out. And these feel like they're pretty sloppy, particularly this volume one, which typically is the one that gets the most use. And let's face it, most players always ride their tone all the way up. But the volume, players will often turn it down whenever they set it down. And so this pot typically does wear out. So it's very likely we'll be soldering new potentiometers into the instrument. The knobs actually don't look too bad. They got some dirt on them. We'll probably replace them because usually when you remove these top hats, they don't like to stay on very tight afterward. And then input jacks I will often replace because they're often worn out, but we'll have a look at that as well. So once we plug it in, we'll do an assessment of how it sounds. We'll listen to the pickups and see what we think about those. Then the next step will be we'll take the strings off. We'll clean it thoroughly. We'll give it a nice cleaning. I mean, there's a lot of dust on this instrument. It hasn't been played in some time, which is perfect for us here at the Guitar Foster Parent. And so we'll give it a cleaning, and we'll peek under the hood here. We'll pull the pick guard off and have a look at what's under there. But I have to say, on first impressions, this guitar is pretty clean. It looks like that it was cared for fairly well. It's just been, moved on from. So we're going to fix it up, and we're going to put it in the hands of somebody that will use it again. So first step, let's plug it in and tune it up, see how it sounds. Well, we've got the guitar tuned up now, and I've got it plugged into my Marshall Valve-Stayed amp. I'm bypassing all my effects. This should just be a clean sound into the guitar. Let's give it a little simple G chord here. And then I'm going to turn the volume up as we do this, and we'll listen for crackling. So the volume's actually not bad. This pot actually is pretty quiet. Doesn't sound too bad. Let's try the tone out. You can hear kind of a, to my surprise, these pots actually sound pretty good. Maybe we'll keep them. All right, so there you have it. We've kind of ridden them, and this guitar is pretty simple. There's only a couple of pots here to check. But I think we're ready to pull the strings off and have a look inside. I really think these sound pretty darn good. So we're going to pull the strings, and then we will pull the pick guard off, and we'll have a look inside. Well, we've got the strings off. Now it's time to pull off this pick guard. Okay, well now with all of the pick guard screws removed, it's time to see what's underneath. Most of these you can just, let's see, that's a good sign when they're sticky and they kind of, that means there's usually been something spilled. And here we go. All right. Well, let's have a look at the electronics. Yeah, you can see that these pretty basic single coil magnet pickups, everything looks very clean under here. These electronics look really, really good. Wiring all looks good. Looking inside the cavity of the guitar here, yeah, I don't see any issues at all in here. It doesn't look like anything's ever been spilled, or really, probably this has never even been removed since the guitar was manufactured. This is a very good sign. This is a nice instrument. One thing I did notice as I was plugging the guitar in and out, this jack's a little bit loose. I didn't hear any noise or shorting. I may work on that a little bit to get it tightened up, but I think we're probably good in here. I don't really think there's really any reason to replace the pickups. Now we will put the guitar into some effects and see if they can drive the kind of sound. But again, bear in mind that this kind of guitar, it's really probably designed for more of a rhythm roll, at least in terms of modern rock music. It's a lightweight guitar. I mean, that's one thing I didn't mention earlier. It's a small body, very thin. It's very light, and really pretty much all business here. 2 single coil pickups with a volume and tone, really designed to let an amplifier and an effects pedal or two kind of control how it sounds. But this guitar is designed to be worn and really bring up rhythm, I feel like. Not that it's not capable of anything else. The guitar is dirty though, so we're going to get in here and do some cleaning. I'm going to go ahead and remove this tailpiece as well, and because it's going to be hard to get it clean underneath there, so it'll be easier just to go ahead and pull it off. One more thing I'll mention is you'll notice that the pickups, be really careful not to pull on this, these pickups are adjustable. The springs are compressed, and you know what? They look just fine. They look like they're holding out just fine. I don't see any problems in here at all. In fact, this thing is pretty darn pristine. One thing I did notice, I don't know if you can see this, I'll move it in closer. Notice right here, there's a little spot here in the cavity of the guitar that's been caused by the input jack. I think there's a pretty good chance that this is not quite deep enough, and that might be why the jack feels a little wonky. So what I may do is bore this wood out a little bit to allow the tip of the input jack, because I think what's happening is when you plug in your cable in, I think it's contacting this. And because I noticed a little resistance when I was plugging the guitar in earlier. And now that I see this damage right here, this kind of area where it's kind of impacted, I think maybe this wasn't drilled out quite enough. So I may take a wide drill bit and just, give this a little more depth so that your guitar cable, when it plugs into the jack, doesn't impact that. And I think that's what's happening here when the guitar is plugged in. I did feel that, and that may be the only thing that I'm feeling on the jack itself. So time to do a little cleaning. All right, well, we've removed this tailpiece and no ground, which tells me the ground must be underneath here. You may be watching this and saying, I knew that. I didn't know that. All right, so let's go ahead and remove this now. All right, so right here you can see how this particular guitar was grounded. If you look right here, the wire comes up right through this channel right here, which is angle drilled through the body, which is pretty common. And then what they did was they wrapped the wires around this screw that mounts it in. We'll do the same thing. That's a great way to ground this. As long as it's grounded to the guitar, then this will all work fine. I'm going to go ahead and clean around this edge here. This part looks just fine. I don't see, look at that. It's for as old as this guitar might be, and I don't know, we'll try to age it later. This looks really, really good. Next, I'm going to pull the neck off and see if I can identify a serial number anywhere. It would be strange for the serial number to be under the neck, but I'd really like to know how old this guitar is. May not be able to tell, but we'll take the neck off on another episode. Well, that's all we have time for today. We've cleaned the guitar, we've looked underneath. I'm very, very happy with what I found. A lot of times with instruments like this, you find some nightmares in there. Very often you find spillage or other types of problems. Everything looks completely factory and clean. I think this guitar was well cared for, and I don't know how many owners it's had over the years. The gentleman I acquired it from had a pretty large collection of guitars, and he was downsizing his collection, thinning the herd is how he put it. And he did mention that this guitar had not been played in years. It had been sitting there, and I thought, well, that's exactly what I'm looking for the guitar foster parent. I will try to age this guitar if I can find a serial number. If not, it's going to be difficult to do that. But it should be possible on the internet to research the years that the 02814 model of Harmony guitars were made and maybe learn a little bit about where they were made. I'm sure there were a lot of them manufactured during that time, but I don't know that for sure. So we'll have a look and see what we can find out for you there. We'll also get to cleaning further up on the neck. The fretboard is dirty. We'll start working on that as well. And now it's time for me to ask you about your ideas. What do you think we ought to do to this little Harmony guitar? What do you think would look good on it? It's black, kind of a tuxedo look. Do you think that we maybe should change the pickguard color? Do you think that maybe we should dress it up a little bit? I don't know really what we would need to do. I don't think this guitar needs a paint job. The paint is in pretty good shape, and so I don't think that we're going to go to the trouble of doing that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Any ideas? We'll slap on some new Ernie Ball Super Slinkies when we're done, and we'll also start working up the neck a little bit and find out how these tuning machines look as we work our way up before we get her all put back together. And then, once we're all finished with everything, we're going to find a home for this guitar. If you'd like to nominate someone to receive this guitar and be its forever home, the only qualifications are is that they will take good care of it and they will play it. I don't want it sitting holding down the floor in some closet. That's the whole point of the guitar foster parent. Let me know down below in the comments, and please like and subscribe to this video and ring the notification bell so that you'll get notified when our next episode comes out on the Harmony 02814 project on the guitar foster parent. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.